Trials and tribulations of documenting XenDesktop 7 with Microsoft PowerShell. The script is actually 99.9% complete, but you will see no joy in the title for this. All right, so this is me. That's enough about me. Okay, XenDesktop 7 script. Does anyone here not know who I am? No, I'll go back to that. Nope. Okay, good. All right. So I started work on this script on Sunday, October 20, 2013, in secret with Jordy and Gibson. And I did it in secret because I had been working on the XenDesktop 5 script and couldn't get anywhere with that sucker. So I was like, well, maybe I can get going with XenDesktop 7. So Jordy and I spent like 10 hours that Sunday on Skype with me doing stuff, sending him sample code. Hey, does it work? You know, in your environment and stuff. So at EDE Rome, I announced it that, hey, I've actually started work on this because we were able to actually figure out a couple of the nodes in the console. Right now, this is almost 20,000 lines of PowerShell. This is a monster script. Right now there are 130 testers. We were up to 150.
$7,000.
Yeah, 100. We were up to 150. Then we were getting nowhere with the script. Then my favorite Citrix outside of Brad and Perrine, Rachel Berry, hooked me up with some people who knew XenDesktop. I don't know if they're on the XenDesktop team or whatever, but she hooked me up with them, and they actually started answering emails, and I was actually able to start making sense of some of this crap. And there were times where we were sending out, or I was sending out like 3 updates a day. And in 3 days, because I sent out so many updates, because we actually started making progress on the script, that people just said, I want out. This is too many updates. And so we're back up. We dropped, I think I went down from like 150 down to 120. I lost 30 testers in 1 week. Because of the progress we were making, I lost testers. So we're back up to about 130 testers. So in 4 days, we will be 20 months into this script. The XenDesktop 5 script took me 23 months to complete. To me, that's how crappy the XenDesktop PowerShell is. Now, I'm not a real developer. I don't claim to be a developer. I don't know the difference between a C#, an SDK, and an API. If I were a real developer like Helga or Andrew Morgan or Remco, I probably could have had all this done in probably a month on my own time, because I probably could have opened up the SDK and understood it. Me, I look at that SDK and I'm clueless. If it's not documented, I can't figure it out. All right, so as with all my scripts for XenApp, PVS, DHCP, Active Directory, another script I'm working on, the XenServer script, I just take the console and I just walk down through the console. So I couldn't figure out machine catalogs or delivery groups or policies or configuration logging, so we started with the simple stuff. We started with the configuration. So what I do is I walk down through the nodes, and then every node you can click on, I get all of that information that's in the top half of the middle pane, and then all the stuff that's in the bottom half of the middle pane. And most things you click on will either have 2, 3, 4, or 5 tabs. I get all the information on every tab that shows up on the bottom pane and the top pane. Then anything you can double click on, if you can double click it, I get that information. Because like a delivery group or machine catalog, if you double click it, it then takes you to the actual machines or the desktops that are in those, and I document all of those. On a machine or a desktop, if you right click on the column headings, you can actually select all these various columns that can be shown for the machine catalogs or delivery groups. I document every single one of those. The simple one, site settings. This was actually very simple because the site name you get from Get XD Site. Default storefront address was the most confusing thing for people, for the testers, was because they were saying, I've got storefront, why is nothing here? The only thing that shows up here is if you actually have storefront installed on the controller. That's the only way you'll get anything from the, you can go ahead and have storefront configured and all that stuff, it will not show up here. To get the storefront, you just get storefront is storefront installed, and then you do the cluster information, you get the URL, boom. But that only works if storefront is installed on the controller. Guess what's not documented? That. Starting in XenDesktop 7.6, they added a product support tab with the customer experience improvement program. So I was just like, how do I find this? Where do I find this, the PowerShell for this? How do I get that? So what I found out, Citrix does not want me using version numbers. In the conversations I've had with the people that Rachel was able to hook me up with XenDesktop 5, starting with XenDesktop 5.6, they added personal vDisk. So I said, okay, if we're XenDesktop 5.6, I can do all the stuff for personal vDisk. So I said, well, I got to get version numbers. So Get Broker Controller shows you a version number. Guess what? XenDesktop 5.0 Service Pack 1 is version 5.1. XenDesktop 5.5 is version 5.1. So Citrix says, they actually said the version numbers are unusable because they're not reliable. What we show as the version number is not what we advertise as the version number, so you can't use version numbers, they're totally unreliable. So if you have to use the version number, you have to go to this registry key to get the actual version number, because in 5.5 it shows it as 5.5. And 5.0, 5.0 Service Pack 1, 5.0 shows it as 5.0, 5.0 Service Pack 1 shows it as 5.1. So you actually get that. What they said to use is, hey, we've added this Get Service Added capability. So license, admin, broker, all the way down through, we've added this. That's how you find out what is there. So they've got all of these service added capabilities. Guess what is not documented? When you run it like Get Broker Service Added capability, you get all this stuff. Plus this one you can't see because I'm testing a new version of XenDesktop, and you probably aren't supposed to know that it can do this feature here. So you go down through this stuff, some of them, all right, there's that personal vDisk storage. That's what you're supposed to look at. Does this product support personal vDisk? You get Broker Service Added capability if the result contains personal vDisk storage. That version of XenDesktop supports personal vDisks. That's what you're supposed to do. So I did that for every single one of these. Never found anything that said product support, CEIP, Customer Experience Improvement Program, nothing. So I finally had to email someone and said, how do you find this stuff? And they said, oh, it's different. What you have to do first, actually look at the PowerShell we generate, and you'll see that it's a set analytics site is how we actually set that. So in order to retrieve it, you have to do Get Analytics site. And I was just like, fine, but how do I know that it exists so that I can actually load the snap-in? Because if someone is running XenDesktop 7.0, 7.1, 7.5, and I go to load the snap-in, the script won't run because it says you've got a missing required snap-in. So how do I know whether or not I can load the snap-in? And they said, oh, for that. Oh, and by the way, so the analytics, guess one's not documented. There's nothing there for analytics. They said, so what you need to do is you have to get config registered service instance where the service type is equal to analytics, and if you get more than one of those returned, now you can load the snap in. Now you've got a version, not just like, but I thought you were doing this in the service added capability thing. Well, we didn't for this one. Okay. So anyway, so now we finally figured that. Hosting. Big as crock of crap. Okay, for hosting, we've actually got connections, we've actually got hypervisors, and then we actually have hosting units. So how do you get all of that stuff? I couldn't figure it out. So 2 years ago, yeah, when I was working on the XenDesktop 5 script, I bugged, I believe the PM for XenDesktop at the time, who's no longer with Citrix, and he hooked me up with a guy named Kenny Baldwin, who was at that time was new with Citrix, and he actually worked and figured this out for the most part. And so what you have to do is you actually have to do PS drives to get all the hosting units, and then you loop through all the hosting units, getting their VM storage, their PVD storage, and all the network information. That's a PS drive. Then once you've done that, then you can use an actual PowerShell commandlet to get all the hypervisors. Then you loop through all the hypervisors, and as you're looping through each of those, I don't know, Helga may be able to find a more efficient way to do this, but you loop through all the hypervisors, and when you go through each hypervisor, you loop through all the stuff you got from the hosting units, matching the storage for the VMs, the PVD, and the networking for each of the hypervisors. And then once you've got that, then you go back to a PS drive and get all the connections, and then loop through all the connections and match all the connections up with all the hypervisor information. So you have to get all the hosting units, then you get all the hypervisors, then you get all the connections, you find the intersection of all of those, and that's the information for one connection that you get inside the console. And guess what? None of this is documented.
I'll get it up.
Yes?
I went through a lot of this pain when I was doing PowerShell to create desktop catalogs and sheet delivery groups. What comes out of the console is it's a place to start, but where I went from that to what I actually finished up with was the pain that I went through in between.
Yeah. It is pain. It's a pain in the butt. No. The Zen service session. Okay. Now, the next hard thing was for machine catalogs, delivery groups, hosting, and storefront. Citrix now has the delegated administrator stuff. So now how do you get administrators? I couldn't figure it out. So Kenny Baldwin, who had access to the developers and the source code, took him 3 weeks to figure out how to get the first type of administrator. So because he did figured out the basic stuff for the hosting, he did the hosting administrator. So to get the hosting administrator, you first have to get all the scopes for that hypervisor object. Then you have to get all the permissions for the metadata map where the object type is either the connection or a host. And then you have to get all the roles, and then you then get the admins by intersecting all of those. And then you get the returned admins. So it's just like, why did Citrix make this so hard? That it took someone who worked for Citrix, who was a developer, who couldn't figure it out without access to the source code. So me, I was just like, why couldn't I have just done like get admin administrator dash type hosting, catalog, desktop group, storefront. And Citrix go and do all this stuff behind the scenes because they know all the metadata type and all the properties that you have to get. Why they didn't do that, I don't know. Licensing. Hoo-hoo, this was fun. Jarian and I spent 6 hours just on this. And the only reason we were able to get it done in 6 hours, do you remember when Citrix released XenDesktop 7.1? They released it, and then within just a couple of days, they released a new ISO.
Yeah.
And then they killed the original ISO. You know why? All the source code for all the PowerShell commandlets was on that original XenDesktop 7.1 ISO.
I got it.
Yeah, that's the only way we were able to figure this out.
Is it on the black market, the ISOs?
No,
Buying black market.
But they actually have all the source code for all the PowerShell stuff on that ISO. And I guess they figured it out, man, 3-4 days later, boom, new ISO. So what I did is I couldn't find anything in eDocs or anything. So what I did is I said, okay, what all snap-ins are loaded? If I do add PS snap-in, asterisk, Citrix, asterisk, what all is loaded? So this is the command I use, get PS snap-in, name citrix.asterisk.admin.asterisk because they're all named citrix.something.admin.v1 or v2. Select by name, sort by name. You come down here, so it's like, oh, there's a Citrix licensing admin. Sweet, I'll go to eDocs. Guess what's not documented? Rachel, are you hearing a common theme here? So, I said, okay, in XenDesktop 5, all I had to do was get LIC inventory, and it returned all the product licenses and everything. Didn't work. So it comes up and says admin address. I said, oh, okay, well, you know, I'll enter the name of my controller. Then you get a certificate verification field. And I'm just like, okay. I said, so, well, maybe it actually needs my license server. That's what it wants for admin address. Didn't matter. Put the license server in there. Certificate verification field. So I thought maybe my server certificate was invalid on my license server. So DigiCert gives CTPs free certificates. So I pop on DigiCert site. I get me a server certificate. I put it on my server. DigiCert works with me. We make sure everything's working with the certificate and everything. Rerun the command, certificate verification failed. So that's when we found that we actually had the source code for the licensing PowerShell stuff. So what we found out, in order to get product licenses, we had to go through all this other stuff. First, we have to get the license server admin address, which is not just a server name, it's an actual special formatted URL with a port number. You get all of that by passing it the license server name you get from get XD site or get broker controller. You pass that to it, then you have to get the certificate associated with that license server, so you get LIC certificate with that license server special admin address. Then, because Citrix is so consistent, in order to get the license admins, you just run get LIC administrator. Ha! Perfect, it gets all the administrators. So why Citrix is so inconsistent? I don't know. I wish they had this for machine catalogs, desktop groups, hosting, and storefront, but it's not that simple. So now once we have all the licensing admins, now we can get the product licenses because now we know our license server admin address and we now have the certificate hash that's returned from getting the license certificate, which is then passed to get LIC inventory, and now you can get all your license server information. Why this is not documented is beyond me, because you can't change a Citrix product license. There's nothing you can do to change a Citrix product license without invalidating the license. So why they don't document it, I don't know. Storefront. Storefront has 3 tabs. The details, well, that turned into a little bit of an issue. Delivery groups was actually pretty simple. It just has an array of UIDs for all the delivery groups. and you just get the delivery group with the UID, returns all the delivery groups. So what we found out we had to do, when you look in the limited help text for in eDocs to get the storefront stuff, if you just want to say, get my storefront address, it says, I need a byte array. You go, where do I get the byte array? Well, when you create the storefront through PowerShell, it returns a byte array. But my storefront's already created. Where do I get the byte array? Well, since I was not documented, I had to reach out to Simon Frost. Simon Frost says, oh, first you have to get all your storefront stuff. So you have to get broker machine configuration, passing it the dash name RS. And I don't know where the RS comes from because I thought the original name for storefront was delivery services, DS. So I still haven't figured out the RS for that. Then once you get that, then you loop through all of that, and then for some odd reason, the byte array is actually called policy. So once you've got the byte array, then you can pass that to your storefront server commandlet, and then it will then return all the storefront information. Then to get the administrators, it's different for storefront because storefront is not a scoped object. For machine catalogs, delivery groups, and hosting, you can say, you know, you can actually create scopes and roles, well, scopes where you can say, hey, an administrator can or cannot, you know, create new whatever, can or cannot edit, can or cannot view, you know, stuff like that. With storefront, there are no scopes. When you create an administrator for storefront, they can do anything and everything in storefront. There are no limitations. So there are no scopes, so it has to be handled differently. And then you just go through the same rigmarole as before, but in this metadata map, the object type is then storefront. Now the only way we were able to figure out all the object types is we just had to keep running, get admin permission, and finding all the different object types that were out there, and then figuring out what goes with what, because it's not documented anywhere. So once you get all that, you go through this same thing to get the actual administrators. Policies. Last year at Synergy, I was in a session by escalation engineer Rick Berry, not related to Rachel Berry, who toward the end of his, when he was talking about policies, he was talking about using Scout to get policy information. And he said that XenDesktop 5 and XenDesktop 7 use the exact same group policy snap-in and module as XenApp 6 and 6.5. I was like, you're kidding. Doesn't work for me. And he said, yep, it works. So the Citrix Common Group Policy Snap-in and the Citrix Group Policy Commands module, he said, work for both versions of XenDesktop. And I was like, okay. When you load all the snap-ins and you get PS Drive, you'll see that the Citrix Group Policy only creates 2 drives in XenDesktop 5 and XenDesktop 7. Local GPO, if you were to just run gpedit.msc on a controller, that would be that local group policy, and then also the template drive, which lists all the templates that are available. Well, the module for the all the group policy stuff says this drive is supposed to default to local farm GPO. There is no local farm GPO. So when I import the module and say, hey, give me this CTX group policy, it says, can't find the drive, local farm GPO doesn't exist. And I'm just like, hey Rick, what's going on? He says, works with Scout. You know, it's like, well, Scout's working around this issue then, because it doesn't exist. So what you actually have to do is you have to create a new PS drive called local farm GPO with the provider Citrix group policy with a root. Now, one nice thing they did when they updated this module for XenDesktop 5 and XenDesktop 7, they added remoting support to the group policy module. But the remoting support does not work for either XenApp 6 or XenApp 6.5. because it looks specifically for the broker service running on your collector, which doesn't exist on a collector. Then, so you can now pass the controller so it will run remotely. Then you have to make the scope global. So inside, well, when you run this from the PowerShell session, it automatically has a global scope. Inside the script, when you create it, it only has the scope within that function. So you have to make it global so it's available to other functions inside the script. Now, once we have our local farm GPO drive, now I can run get CTS group policy, and from there, everything works. So all the code I had developed for XenApp 6 and XenApp 6.5, copy, paste into the XenDesktop 5 and 7 scripts, and just a little change where I had to add creating the local farm GPO, because I already detect, are we Active Directory group policy, then I create a drive named after the Active Directory group policy. So I already had that in there. I just had to say, hey, if it's local, create this drive name, else. So it was just a simple if statement to work around that. So very few changes had to be made to all the code I already had, and lo and behold, it actually worked. All right, so let me show you a sample report here. Okay. Since this is going to be kind of weird here. So anyway, you got your usual cover report and table of contents. And then we go through and list all the information on a machine catalog. Now for this report, I did all the details. I would hope no one would ever run this report in a production environment with all the details, because you will get an extremely lengthy report. And it's all spelled out in the help text for the script, that, you know, what all causes all the detail and stuff. And then, so we go through, we give you all the scopes, we give you all the machines that are in the machine catalog, and then we also give you all the administrators. And then we also give you, when you specify it, all the details, you know, for the machines and stuff. We also go through, give you basic info on the delivery group, and then we give you all the detailed information. Now, one thing on a delivery group, you can include users, but you can't exclude users. In order to exclude users, you have to use PowerShell. Once you use PowerShell, then you go back into Studio, you'll see a big asterisk in red writing, hey, this has been changed by PowerShell, so you can't do anything with the groups here. And so I'll go through in there and show you, hey, you've actually included specific users or you have excluded specific users. Then we give you all the scopes that apply to a delivery group, your storefront servers, and then all the other settings. And then we also show you all the machine catalogs that a delivery group belongs to, because a delivery group can belong to multiple machine catalogs. And then all the administrators. And then again, all the machine details. Now, you wouldn't want to use all the machine catalog details and all the delivery group details, because you're going to get a whole lot of duplicated information. So you would either pick one or the other. And then we also add a delivery group utilization report, and let's see if I can somehow, yeah. So obviously in my little lab, I've only got one desktop per delivery group. So we added that in. And then we list all the applications. Now, one of the things, when we were doing this, originally everything was just coming up master image. So I emailed the guys at Citrix and said, what is this master image? You know, where do I get that from? And they said, don't know. Don't know what that's for. Don't know where it comes from.
But is it not what we see in the studio?
Yeah, but they don't know where master image comes from. So what we found out, when I had a guy that said, hey, how come you're not giving anything for the @v node in Studio? And I was like, I don't have any @v configured. So we actually did a go-to meeting, and I spent several hours with him, got all the information for the @v node, and then when I looked inside applications, most of his applications said location @v. And so then we started going through and running Git, broker application and all that stuff, trying to figure it out. Well, if the application actually has anything in the metadata map property, it's an @v application. Because when you look in there, it says, hey, this is the @v server, this is the @v package, this is the path we're going to execute, these are the parameters and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, if we got something in the metadata map property, location is @v, otherwise location is master image. And the
But that's
Citrix,
not really correct, is
yeah, it is correct.
it? It is?
It is correct, yeah. Because you're either in @v or you're in the master image. Because applications can only be installed, you can't run an application on a foreign server.
You can.
Well,
You can run it from a file share.
yeah, yeah.
technically,
But if
it
you
would
do,
be a master
yeah,
image.
and I did that. I set all the various options. I ran from a file share, I ran a website, did all this stuff. And they all came back master image, even in Studio. So I knew the information was correct. So if there's something in metadata map property for an application, it's an @v. Because those are the only two properties that can be in the location, is @v or master image. Which of course is not documented anywhere. So it took a lot of figuring out how to get that. And I'm glad I have good testers that will allow me to have access to their lab environments to play around with some of this stuff. Now when we go and look at the actual applications, we can see the visibility. The visibility is what is actually in Studio called visibility. But the visibility name is not the name of the property. There's an actual property called visibility that means, can the user see the application on Storefront or not? Which is not documented. You can't set that in Studio, you can only set it through PowerShell. So I'm going to go through and add that in. So I've got to add that in there.
But this is a failure of Storefront, or is it a failure of the Studio?
No, it's just, that's what they call it in Studio. They call it visibility, which is what users are able to use this, and for some reason they call that visibility. But in the PowerShell commandlet, the property has a different name. There's also a property called visibility, and all the visibility means is the icon visible in Storefront or not? Because you can disable an application and it will still show up in Storefront. But you can hide the application and make it not visible. And then it will disappear from Storefront, but you can't see that or set it in Studio. So I need to add that in there, because if you go in there and set it through PowerShell, it needs to be documented.
The only way you could set the visibility is through PowerShell?
Yep. Yep. Found that out in one of the sessions I went to.
So it's not like, okay, it's not like previous versions of XenApp.
Nope.
Where you
Nope.
could, disable and then hide, right?
Nope. There is no hide option. And the hide option is not called hide. The property for hide is not called hide.
Right.
It's called visibility.
Right.
And visibility actually means what users have visibility, I guess, into the application.
Yeah.
So if you want to hide an application, then you'll have to run the command on the storefront because
No, you're running everything on the controller.
okay.
Yeah, you're just running get broker or actually set broker application,
Well, this should
and
be
you
part
set
of
the
the
property.
UI.
Huh?
It should be added to the UI. It was so easy.
It should be added to the, it was in XenApp 6.5, they all had disabled hide, but it's not in the GUI for XenDesktop 7.
Good job finding it.
Yeah.
Is it because they have certain flags where you have the hashtag and then
I don't think so.
keywords?
No, I wouldn't think that, because all that you can see in Studio. So and then we can get, so there's all the details, and then obviously I had no sessions, but this will actually list all the sessions, every username, the session ID, and all that stuff that you can see. and then of course, then all the administrators. And then
Question.
all the policies. Now, one thing I have asked for, and Citrix just gives me crickets for this, I wanted to because, starting with XenDesktop 7, they actually merged user and computer policy settings in the console, where previously in XenApp 6, 6.5, and 5. When you go into Studio, you've actually got computer settings, user settings.
Which is weird because in AD, it's still you have to go
Yep.
there and there.
Yep,
It just doesn't
that
make
is
any
correct.
sense.
Doesn't make any sense. So I tried to duplicate that in the script. And it worked for everyone except one user. One user had so many policies, and he actually had like computer policies 1, 2, 3, and then user policies 1, 2, 3, all with different names and stuff. And then somehow they were merged in the view to where the priorities were 1, 2, 3, 4, but you never saw a 4 anywhere in Studio. And I kept trying to figure out, how do you do that? What are they looking at and doing in order to do this merging? I've asked Simon Frost, I've asked Stuart Moore, I've asked Fred Lee, Lou, whatever his name is, that actually wrote this blog article. Not a word. They won't tell me what they do. So I said, I'll just have to go back to how it was done, for all prior versions. So I actually separate user and computers. And so we can get the site policies, we get the Active Directory policies. No one has ever asked for me to list the templates, so I have never included templates in any of the scripts. And so then we can go through, and then, so like for the computer settings, we can get all the filters, and then we can go through down. And I get I think it's 253 or 273 policy settings for both computers and users are all documented. So yes, I actually went through and created policies that have, or actually a policy that has every single setting to make sure that everything was documented correctly. And there were some the settings that actually caused us much grief, and I had to work with Ian Brighton on it. There are a couple of policy settings, like this connector for config manager, force log off, message box, and then this one here. The data actually contains carriage return line feeds in it. And so we actually had to work around that, because what was happening, it was taking, this would come over here, and then all of this would be over here. So we had to work around that. And so then after policies, let's see here. There's the configuration logging. And then our configuration stuff. Then all the administrators, scopes, and roles. All the controller information, and then optionally, a bunch of hardware information about the controllers. And then
Oh
all
god,
the
someone is
hosting.
using Zen server.
Yeah, this is XenServer 6.5, fully patched actually all the way. And then we also, optionally, will give you, because it's, if you double click the connection and stuff, it will take you then to tabs where you can see all the desktop machines and all the server machines. And then the licensing, and then storefront. And there's storefront and all the delivery groups, and then all the administrator stuff. And because I don't have AppV, no AppV information. But we do show all the AppV management server stuff.
Can you show the XenDesktop licenses page? On the drill down? Oh, wait. Okay.
Yeah, it's all there.
Okay.
And this matches exactly what we see in Studio. And that took a while to figure out. Not only to figure out what commands to run, but to actually make it match what we see in studio. Now, the only thing we ran into, I'm using the subscription advantage date that's actually returned by the commandlet. On the website, it's a different. I believe it shows April 12th. That's the SA date for XenDesktop 7.6. So why?
So it's just one day difference, is it?
Yeah, just 1 day different.
Maybe.
But for a licensing renewal or something, that 1 day
Yeah.
can make a big difference.
Yeah.
You know?
Maybe it's a time zone. UTC or
No, because this is just what's actually returned by the commandment. And this is what it actually returns, is 2015.041.
And for the license server itself, there's no power transfer, right?
Well, the licensing snap-in will actually work on a licensed server.
License server.
Yeah, you can actually install it on a licensed server. It's just not documented.
Yeah.
I've not tested it, but I was told it's the same thing.
We're getting
Right.
W of mine.
What, do you only show one storefront server, right? Or
No.
do you have two?
No, I have had up to, I created, because storefront servers don't actually have to actually exist. You can actually create multiple storefront servers. And so I only created one, but if you have multiple, it
Okay.
lists every one and gives you all that information for every one of the storefront servers.
Just one minute.
Okay? All right, well, thank you very much. Next.